Determinism can be found in the form of psychological determinism, sometimes called behaviorism. This approach is based on the work of psychological studies by people like Ivan Pavlov or B.F. Skinner. It is based on the idea that human beings, like other members of the animal kingdom, may make many of their decisions in accordance with their conditioning. Pavlov experimented with what has become known as classical conditioning. He found that the normal reaction of a dog to food were salivating and producing stomach acid. It cannot be said that these actions can be done via an act of will. The dog cannot decide to salivate or produce stomach acid. These reactions are unconscious. However, he discovered that he could train such a reaction in a dog by a variety of stimuli. Usually the dog could produce such a reaction to the smell or sight of food. However, he used conditioning to produce the reaction at the sound of a bell alone. He did so by firstly providing food, the unconditioned stimulus, which produced salivation, an unconditioned response. He then went on to ring a bell, the conditioning stimulus, at the same time as producing the food. Of course, the dog salivated. However, the next stage was to ring the bell, the conditioning stimulus, when there was no sight or smell of food present. This produced salivation in the dog, which we would now call the conditioned response. Clearly, the salivation was trained into the dog through the process of association, and the dog could not be said to control the salivation itself. This will occur even when the dog is not hungry, and this depends upon the psychological mechanism of association. Skinner developed Pavlov's ideas further. He produced a more proactive technique which allowed the conditioner to have more control. This is known as operant conditioning. A creature is more likely to adopt a behavior that brings about a reward and more likely to reduce behavior that brings about punishment. Skinner experimented with pigeons and rats. In this model, he used positive reinforcers, giving an animal something it likes. This strengthens behavior that brings about the positive reinforcer. A pigeon will quickly learn which button to press if it results in food, for example. A negative reinforcer is the removal of a stimulus that is unpleasant, and this strengthens behavior which results in the end of the unpleasant stimuli. For example, I might be more likely to press a button if it turns off a loud alarm. Skinner also used punishment. This is giving something unpleasant. This weakens or makes less frequent the behavior which produces the punishment. For example, a laboratory rat will quickly learn how to get out of a maze if it receives a mild electric shock for every wrong turn it makes. For instance, when we train our pets to behave in the way that we want, we use these techniques. If I want my dog to learn to sit, I might offer a reward when she does so. Once she's grasped the idea that sitting gets her a treat, I can introduce the word sit at the same time that she places her behind on the floor and give her the treat. Soon I will find that I only have to say the word sit and she will do as she is told. If she were unwilling to sit, I could place my hand lightly on her behind, putting a bit of pressure on, which is removed as soon as she sits down. This is a negative reinforcer. Some people use punishment techniques with their pets to remove unwanted behavior, such as isolation, shock collars, or a rolled up newspaper. This is operant conditioning. Parents, consciously or unconsciously, use these same techniques with their children, although we certainly would not recommend shock collars. We give stickers, treats, praise and other rewards when our young child does something desirable. For instance, this is the basic principle of potty training. We make them sit at the table until they've eaten their vegetables, or hold our hands until they can stop running away from us. If things go wrong, we apply the naughty step or send them to their rooms. If all our behaviour is learned in this way, then at what point do we claim moral responsibility for our actions? Skinner claimed that given enough information, he could write a formula that would predict every human action. Whilst he did not achieve this, we can say that his conditioning techniques are apparent in our everyday interactions with each other, and it is entirely possible that the responsibility for our behaviour lies not with ourselves, but back of us, within the conditioning applied by others.